This show is made possible by our Patreon supporters. To get access to our exclusive content and support the show, visit www.patreon.com/EABB podcast. That's www.patreon.com/EABB podcast. Thanks.
Hello, and welcome to the Early American Brass Band podcast. My name is Chris Triano, and I'm joined always by Stephen Canastrisi.
Hi.
Oh, that sounded like such a sad hi this time.
Oh, it wasn't meant to be sad or sad.
Are you in a good mood today, Stephen?
I'm in a great mood today. That's just good. Had our first interview since, what did we say, August, maybe?
Yeah, it's been a long time. We did a really good job at loading up those recordings, and then you and I both got jobs. So,
right. Yeah.
So fell a little bit behind, but this was a really fun way to get back into it. This is episode 47, and today we're interviewing Kenneth Serfass. Ken Serfass is the founder and director of the Antebellum Marine Band, and he is also a reenactor who frequently portrays President and General Ulysses S Grant. It was a lot of fun getting to speak with Ken today, and we hope that you enjoy this episode. I also noticed about halfway through the interview that I was using the wrong microphone and switched it over. So just in case the microphone quality at the beginning of the episode is not so great, I apologize. It will hopefully improve about halfway through. Stephen.
Yeah, good interview, good stories, and good information in here, so we really think you'll enjoy it. As always, if you like what you're hearing, you can support the show on Patreon and Teespring. Those are the two platforms for monetary support, if you will, but then always a like and a share and a message on any social media platform goes a long way. And we're also on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. We put up every episode, as well as some other stuff. Chris is starting to put is continuing to put movie scenes up there that feature Early American Brass Band and some other content that's just up on our YouTube page. So you can go subscribe there. That would really help us out a lot too. So lots of ways to support the show if you like what you're hearing. And we think you'll like this episode. So here it is.
I'd like to welcome Kenneth Serfass to the show. Kenneth, thank you so much for coming on to the Early American Brass Band podcast. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Super excited to have you on and getting to talk about all the projects you do, both in the music scene and the history scene, and the combination of the two. So very excited for that. Stephen and I were talking before the show, and we're thinking about kind of starting this interview with maybe a broader question. We were wondering, kind of taking the first major step back, and then I'm sure the details will get filled in as we go along. What got you into reenacting as Ulysses S Grant specifically?
Well, my fascination with Grant goes back to when I was 8. I was home in third grade. We lived in Hellertown, PA. I was home from school with chicken pox, and the homework had been getting sent home. And from what I understand, from what the kids told me in my class, our teacher had laid out biographies of various great Americans on a table, and all the kids had to pick one. And whether she picked it for me or if it was the last one left, I'll never know. But the story of Ulysses S. Grant by Jeanette C. Nolan was sent home, and with a little note saying, read this book. It's called a biography, and we'll be doing a report on it. And that is on the shelves right behind me. 2 shelves, 57 books about U.S. Grant. That is, as is in a military ceremony, right of the line and place of honor is that first book, and all the other books in my library. And just being a band kid, growing up with everybody teasing you and ridiculing you for being a band kid, that really stuck with me, because with Grant, he was already breaking horses at age 8. So it struck me like, wow, he was good at something right away, and his friends teased him about it because they weren't good at it, So that made me relate to his experience as a kid. It served as a great way to just deal with it, because it's like, well, you know what? He dealt with it, and look where it took him. So I can tough this out, And if I get really good at it, who knows where it'll take me? And kind of that inspiration always carried me as a kid growing up, and it carried me through my Marine Corps time too.
Wow, that's awesome. In the Marine Corps, were you a musician in the Marine Corps?
I was a tuba player, MOS tuba player, and at that time, bass players had to be, you were a tuba major and a bass minor. If you came in playing bass, you had to learn tuba as your minor.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, that was the MOS.
Is that still standard now?
Yeah, there's a separate MOS for bass players now. They don't have to minor on, tuba players are gleefully happy they don't have to minor on bass.
Yeah, there you go. Are there any instruments that currently need to kind of do that doubling?
Certain woodwinds, yeah, like saxes and flute, because your fingerings are, can relate. If you're an MOS sax player, it's all of them that you're expected to be able to play. You might settle in as a tenor specialist in the big band, but you're more important on alto for marching band or what have you. And so somebody actually can play a soprano sax, and cool, you're the guy we're going to call for that. It works out that way. But as far I expected, because I played bass trombone in jazz band in high school, I expected I'd get to play bass bone, in the Marine Corps, and they were like, "Yeah, don't worry about that so much," because all the trombone players like, "Back off, I'm playing bass."
Yeah. Oh, yikes. So was it reading that book that got you hooked in history, or did you kind of already have that history bug circling around before that book?
Kind of into history, because that was 73. And, consider what was on TV at that time, for entertainment, obviously cartoons as a kid, but a lot of 60s TV shows were on all the time. So Hogan's Heroes was on, McHale's Navy, F Troop was on, and the military shows appealed to me, and then particularly F Troop. And then I got a little older, and I discovered Wild Wild West, and I've also been a train aficionado since I can remember. Oh, cool. So, trains, and then Civil War trains, and I in all the reading, and then Grant is on Wild Wild West. So then I'm more curious about it, and I'm reading Civil War books, and I'm reading about Civil War railroads, and I'm just putting all these things together, and I'm just indulging all that history at the same time.
So when did you start dipping your toe into reenacting? Did that coincide with your time in the Marines, or?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I'd seen reenacting. In fact, my senior year before going to boot camp, it was May. I had a working brass quintet in my last 2 years of high school. We played weddings and little community college ceremonies here and there, and we would always play in the Lehigh Valley Mall at Christmas time. And there was somebody there from the Sons of Union Veterans who heard us playing at Christmas time, and he got the idea that we could be his band to play their ceremonies in May when they went around like Memorial Day weekend. So my oldest brother had played drums in high school, and he had a marching snare on a sling. So he went out and he played a drum thing for these old guys to march into the cemetery. And our quintet was there at the side, and we played a couple Civil War tunes. So I started seeing these guys in Civil War uniforms. I'd been to Gettysburg in fourth grade as a Cub Scout. I was already indulged with the Grant fascination. I had Battle Cry of Freedom board game, the Time Life series on the Civil War. I had built the Monitor and Merrimack ship models, so I was all into the whole thing. And then I saw these guys in uniform. I'm like, oh, that is just way cool. Then I learned what reenacting is, and I'm thinking, well, that'll be fun to do when I'm old enough. Yeah. And I was always around it, being posted where I was in the Marine Corps. I was stationed at Parris Island after the School of Music, so I was in South Carolina, and then I re-enlisted. I moved to Quantico, Virginia. So then I'm right around, and our show band at Quantico would play at Manassas.
Oh, cool.
So I'm around Civil War battlefields. The School of Music is in Norfolk. So I'm around, and I'm right there going, Hampton Roads, Monitor, Merrimack. I built those models, So, it's already kind of hovering on the edges. When I was at Camp Lejeune, 2000 to 2000, 99 to 2001, the first time I got involved with reenacting. Obviously in the South, they like playing Rebel more than they like playing Yankee. So it's hard to find people in blue. And I was like, there's no way I'm putting gray on, you know?
Yeah.
Those guys, all these Johnnies are like, this is great. We got somebody to shoot at every time.
Yeah, great. Yikes.
So, that was my introduction. Here's a musket. Here's how we use it. Put the sack coat on. My final tour was at Camp Pendleton. So I got sent back out to San Diego. I had been there before previous. My daughter was growing up there, so I was going to retire out there. And I'm getting ready to check in January 2002 at Camp Pendleton to the 1st Marine Division Band. And I'm living in Escondido, and I go to this little club where I'd always, it's a coffee house. I used to visit there when I was recruiting in Escondido. And they had a poster up for a Civil War band that was forming. And it was the man in charge is David Powell, who began the thing he called it the Second U.S. Cavalry Brass Band. And he was part of the American Civil War Society, the ACWS, in Southern California. So they were going to meet at this club, this place called the Metaphor. And it was like, bring your instruments, my musical experience is desired. So I show up with my tuba, and I'm all fired up. And this guy's like, where have you been my entire life? Because, he's put music in front of me, and I'm playing everything. I've been in the Marine Corps how many years at this point? Yeah. We really stress being able to sight read. I started playing tuba when I was 6 and 7. So I'm all about playing, and, and I'm like, throw me anything. I want to read it. I want to play it. So he's like, yeah, you're in my band. And, why don't you come out to the first event of the year? We'll have a uniform for you. So then I got introduced to how that all works, watching reenactors, doing everything. I was there specifically to do the band thing. Yeah. I wasn't involved with carrying a musket or anything. And he was with a cavalry troop run by a former Marine officer. So I bonded with that guy, and they kind of harbored our little band. We had like 8 players. Mm-hmm. And we were reading the Mark Elrod brass band book for the gigs. And everything is so bone dry, it's root 5/4 for tuba. Oh, you might get a passing tone here or there. So the parts are so bland, and I'm like, okay, if this is how it's going to be every time, I'm going to die. From what I want to play, that's got a little more meat on it. So I'm asking him, like, why can't we get some of the Marine Band stuff? They played opera stuff. He goes, well, we're supposed to model ourselves on a cavalry band, so we'd be really basic, and it'd be musicians who can play one instrument or another. In case somebody goes down, they can pick the other horn up, and So I'm learning about how brass band scoring goes. I'm learning how the Army bands were real rudimentary, because that's all they needed. And I'm starting to look at it like, well, the Marine Band would be much more interesting. But I'm still in the Corps at this point. I got 2 years to retire. 1st Marine Division got involved with going to Iraq. And, of course, I was involved with the workups and getting everybody to go. And then I retired in 2004. In the middle of all that, I was permitted to retire. They didn't need gunnies they wanted junior troops at that point. So I walked away from the reenacting at that point, because for those last 2 years I was on active duty, I was in the 2nd U.S. Cavalry, not just in his brass band, but I had a carbine, and I'm in a shell jacket, and I was one of the legit regular troopers, and I was having a great time being a private again, because that's all I had to do was show up and fire my musket and my carbine and do my thing, and then go play in the band. So we were still using modern instruments, some of us. I mean, I have my tuba I've been playing since I bought it from the Lehigh Valley Youth Symphony in 1984. And it's a rotary minal, 4-valve rotary B-flat minal. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll save up and get an over-the-shoulder tuba at some point. But okay, if I get more serious. So I retired. I wanted to finish my degree because I wanted to be a music teacher. So I put everything aside like that and just nosed into getting my GE done. And I had done some music stuff. The School of Music bandleader course was accreditable, transferred to your BA. So I was looking at doing all these different things. So I walked away from the reenacting stuff for about 2 years, and I wanted to get back in, but I didn't want to do the cavalry stuff anymore. And I was really bored with this band because it was we're still playing the same 10 Civil War top 10 tunes out of the Elrod book. You're not playing anything else. And I had been a band leader in the Marines, and one of our duties is arranging and writing. So I started scoring my own stuff.
Nice.
I mean, Battle Hymn of the Republic. Well, I think I want to add this to it. I think I want to add, and I remember Dave was always telling me, you can't embellish it that much because those kinds of things weren't done yet. I'm like, oh yeah, you look at the Marine Band library. Look at the Gilmore Band. You know, these guys were playing some intense stuff.
Yeah.
They weren't just playing real rudimentary. And he said, well, then you're going to have to be the Marine Band. And I thought, okay, well, what better guy to do that, right? Because I actually lived it.
Yeah.
So what's that going to take? Well, red coats, over the shoulder horns, Alexander clarinets, you know. So, and I'm like, okay, so I see dollar signs just piling up, you know, what it's going to take to do all that. I had known, and you'll know his name too. I had already met Yari Villanueva when I was in the Corps. Mm-hmm. When I was at Lejeune as the band leader, I was buying music for our brass quintet. Mm-hmm. And Yari was in the Air Force Band at that time, and he was selling arrangements and things. So I was buying stuff from him, and we started a correspondence. And by the time all this other stuff happens, where I'm looking at creating my own band, Facebook starts. And of course, Yari was already searching out, like, across the country, who's doing Civil War era brass band, you know. And I was in San Diego, and he found me, and we just started talking. And then we're like, yeah, I think we did talk. I used to buy stuff from you when I was in the Corps, you know. So he was very encouraging. And he said from the start, do your band. And I said, well, I'm going to need period horns. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need that. And he said, maybe you should just start it. At least you'll have it going and go from there, you know. And that was like, okay, you know, coming from a guy like him who's in it, I'll take that as an encouragement, because in the reenactor realm, like in regular reenacting, we meet so many people who might perceive you as some kind of threat to their little kingdom, you know.
Oh, true. Yeah.
You start your thing, and all of a sudden, oh no, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should do this over here instead. And Yari was definitely not that way. He wasn't in that reenactor realm that was protective of that kind of thing, and he's always been encouraging. So that was a great confidence builder to even get the thing going.
Yeah, definitely. Going back to you talking about embellishing the arrangements and stuff, I know when I was when I was doing the dissertation and going through different band manuals and stuff, I saw in the Dodworth Brass Band School that there is a small little sentence in there that says, be sure to only play the music that's written on the page. Don't do any embellishing. If you want to embellish the music, play a solo that features you instead. So, like, if they needed to have a disclaimer in the 1850s to tell musicians not to embellish the music, that means that there was the temptation and the ones that were already doing it, you know.
Right.
So right. It's definitely happening.
There's guys with that mindset already. Yeah. And you know, maybe that was already bred into me, because I remember doing that stuff in high school. Mm-hmm. You know, I would hear, as the tuba player, I would hear like the trombones doing something. Like, I'm going to do that lick with them, you know, and the director would throw me to sleep, like, and I'd nail it. And he'd be like, okay, you nailed it. At least you nailed it. If you tried it and failed, then no. I had 2 or 3 band leaders like that in the Marine Corps. If I didn't do something at a gig, they'd be like, hey, Serfass, what happened? You didn't do it that time? It's like, oh, you like that? Yeah.
They already asked for forgiveness, right?
You know, and I just stuck one time. I was just goofing around before we played a gig where I was warming up, and piccolos were all huddled up, and they were doing the pick solo in Stars and Stripes. And I walked over and I went in their circle, and I'm playing it with them.
Nice. Classic.
And we started doing that. That started becoming a thing. Like, hey, we're going to play Stars and Stripes. Corporal Serfass, you're going to come out the first time and then go back. And after the breakup strain, we're going to go back through and let the picks do it. Then we'll go out on the Grandioso. And that became like the thing we would always do. It became a thing with me in San Diego, between the Marine Band San Diego from the Recruit Depot. And once I retired, I was assistant director at Mesa College of the band there. And I had also co-directed the City Guard Band in San Diego during my first tour from 91 to 94. And I'd always do the piccolo solo. And we'd always play it at the Organ Pavilion in Balboa Park. So every year with the City Guard and then the Marine Band, I would do it. So I was always at least twice a year in Balboa Park. The first year I was actually out of the band on recruiting duty, somebody came up to the band after the show, was like, where's the guy that used to play the tuba solo? They didn't call it the piccolo solo; they called it the tuba solo.
That piccolo solo in Stars and Stripes has become a 4th of July concert euphonium feature staple. In community band, the Keystone Band of Raresburg. If you ever run across them. I play with them back in home, and that's a 4th of July thing that is often asked of the
That's cool.
section.
The thing that hurts is when a brass quintet does a brass quintet arrangement of the whole second suite and the euphonium solos and the trombone. That one hurts. Yeah, that one hurts a little bit, but
yeah.
I'm sure the picks are saying the same thing though, right?
Famous solos covered by other instruments, right?
Yeah. There's an idea for a CD right there, right?
A CD that would sell no copies.
Well, just to the people who recorded it.
Yeah, there you go. Do you know what ended up happening with that the California Cavalry Band?
Yeah, they kind of reached a peak. They had interest, and they kind of lost some interest. You know, reenactors come and go. Dave had his band going. I started my band, and there was another group from Long Beach called the Brigade Band, and it was this woman had a trust fund, so she bought a whole bunch of instruments and sack coats and things. And she was part of the now it's an interesting acronym when you take it out, but it was the Great American Yankee Freedom Band in Long Beach. Huh. So it was the Gay Freedom Band, right? So it was the Gay Pride Band in LA County that that was like her core organization. So she was plucking people out of that group who wanted to be in her reenactor band. And she had about 15, but she didn't want to lead it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So she's reaching out to the reenactors, and somebody said, "Oh, get this guy Ken. He's starting his own band." So she gets a hold of me, and she says, we start talking, and she says, "I don't know if I even want to do this now. I think I just want to back you." Because she liked the whole idea of it being, if we were doing the Marine Band, we got to play their literature, we got to play more in a virtuoso setting.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just going to play the B flat bare bones Yankee Doodle and Dixie and call it a concert kind of thing. We need to be playing opera stuff. So she was really encouraging. She sent her players towards me to do that, and I had 8 or 9 players. I wound up playing in their summer concerts up in West Hollywood every once in a while. They'd be short tuba players. So I'd go up from San Diego to play with that band. And they would come down to the San Diego Pride Festival and march the parade in San Diego. So I would play sousaphone in their band because, again, always short of tuba players.
Yeah.
But the best part, it was everybody's there to do music. Let's all make this happen and have a great time doing it, and having that history connection. Some of those guys really got into the whole historical concept of it.
Nice.
And they said it was opening up something musical to them that they had never even considered with brass band literature and bands of that time. So it was a really cool crossover.
So already talking about the uniqueness of that Marine Band, the early Marine Band that you're doing, in terms of the repertoire and obviously the uniforms and stuff, is there anything else that either provided like a unique perspective or maybe a unique challenge choosing to do the Marine Band over something else?
Yeah, in a couple ways. Well, obviously, the uniforms, they're wearing the scarlet double-breasted tunic, which is the red version of the Marine dress blues of that time. The regular Marine uniform was blue anyway, but their dress uniform had it was double-breasted, had 2 rows of 7 buttons. So the Marine enlisted dress uniform was the equivalent of what Army colonels look like. With 2 rows of 7 buttons, shoulder fringe, that kind of stuff. That the blue one that Marines wore. There's an account, some Marine walking out of the barracks in Washington in the dress uniform, and there were Army soldiers going by, and they saluted him because they thought he was a colonel.
There you go.
And all they saw was the rows of buttons and all the fringe and everything else, and then they were hot that they learned this was an enlisted Marine. So, so the band uniform is the red version of that. So it's got to have all of that look to it. Like today, the Marine Band, when they march and they're in their scarlet tunics, only the drum major wears the ranks. And that was true of that time also. Scala was the first to be called band leader by actual billet. in 1858 when he came over from Italy. So I wanted to model it on the Civil War period, because the first thing everybody goes to is, oh, John Philip Sousa. And I'm like, okay, here's a good teaching moment, because his dad was in the band playing trombone at that time. He was a kid. He was born in 54, so he would be coming up through that time. And what Scala did to put the band on the map is really what sets, kind of tees up what Sousa's going to capitalize on in his time. And until the Marine Band actually designed a program around that, and I have the script from that too. What was funny was I was developing a similar script of my own at the time, that before I saw theirs, and I developed my whole concert routine was telling that story, how the Marine Band becomes the president's own because of how Scala sees that the band needs to be relevant. And that's the Marine Corps story all through the first 120 years or so, is the Marine Corps is always on the verge of being cut by the bean counters. Mm-hmm. So everything the Marines can do to stay in favor of the president or the Congress, they're doing everything they can. And when the commandant learns that Mrs. Lincoln likes opera, and she finds out that Scala is an opera musician who hires other opera players from Europe to come over and make this virtuoso band, the commandant's like, okay, everything we can do with this band now and make them something that the president can't do without. And that's kind of the narrative I follow with my concerts, because I'll play a real simple version of Red, White, and Blue, and I'll play a real simple version of the Star Spangled Banner, and play, these are the band arrangements of that time, and then I'll pull out like the Grand March to Aida, or some other Verdi thing, or some kind of Mozart transcription. And it was Scala who was taking the opera literature that was popular for that season and transcribing it for the band to play to capitalize on that popularity. So that became something I wanted to do with the band. But I also had guys in the band who wanted to be reenactors, which is what the cavalry band was doing. All these guys were going out to be troopers, and then they were putting their guns down to go grab horns and go play. Yeah. So, I was kind of misguided in doing that in the first year or two, where I had my band out as like being stretcher bearers. And if they wanted to go fire with somebody in the line, they were doing that. And then looking at it, I got the second book in the John Sullivan series called Marines in the Civil War. Book 2, Chapter 7 is about the Marine Band. And that became like the Bible for how to do this impression, because it laid out all their duties, and they were strictly musicians. So me as an actual Marine musician who had military duties and music duties, I'm sitting back going, oh, so they're really like the president's own today, where that's all they're doing is that. They're not even doing stretcher duty. Wow. So I told my guys, so we're not going to do stretcher stuff at the reenactments anymore. If we're going to be the Marine Band, we're just going to focus on that. Yeah. So that impression became its own thing. But then again, I had guys who wanted to be on the field. I had my own high school students I was handpicking from the bands I worked with. I had 3 Marine bands in San Diego County with buddies I served with that I could pull to come play in my band, and they're all sitting around at the reenactment saying, boy, it'd be fun to go out in the battlefield. And I said, if we do, we're going out as regular Marines then. And we won't be the band going out, because that would be improper. And they said, fine. So we actually wound up creating a Marine detachment.
Oh, okay.
So we had 20 guys with Marine uniforms with the white cross belts and muskets, and half of us were regular actual Marines, and the others were these kids and others around us who glommed on and kind of inherited our aura about us. And the other reenactors wouldn't fight us. We go out in the field and they didn't want to fight us, because they were saying half of those guys are actually Marines. There's no way we're going up against them.
That's funny.
But then we'd get down to play, and we were like, okay, we're not those guys you saw on the field over there. We're the Marine Band. I don't even know who they are over there doing that kind of thing. And we tried to distance ourselves in that regard and say, this is what the Marine Band impression is different. And it really started to draw a line, because there was another band forming in Southern California, and they're called the Armory Band. Mm-hmm. And their leader was an Army intelligence officer, not a musician in the Army, but he's picking my brain about how I put my band together. He's picking Dave's brain about his cavalry band, and he wanted to put this band together and be this conglomeration thing. And it was something that used to happen at drum corps back in the VFW drum corps days, where people would poach players off of each other. And this guy, and I've told him this to his face, so this is not something I'm saying behind his back, but he kind of killed the hobby for some people because he would talk down the other bands, like especially to somebody new. Somebody walks into a reenactment, it's a trumpet player. Hey, I think I want to do this. I want to play in one of the band. Well, don't go to that cavalry band because don't go to that Marine band. You want to come to our band. You know, and then somebody would hear us and go, wow, I'd love to play with you guys, but I was told I shouldn't. Well, who told you that? You know, because we and David's band, we never had this policy of you could only play in our band. You know, and that's another crossover with reenactors. You know, you join a reenactor unit, you're in F company, you know, whatever regiment you're in, and that's your unit. You don't dare go in with the Zouaves. You're over here with us now, you know. And I thought that was something a little unfair to musicians, you know, because what's the harm in them playing 3 concerts a day if they got the chops and the time to do it?
When you're leading the Marine Band, are you presenting yourself as Scala when you're doing that?
Visually, yes. I got teased horribly one time that I didn't sound Italian when I spoke, because I would do my own moderation. And I put on an accent and it was bad. And I'm like, I'm never doing that again, because that was, you know, not doing that. So if I look like them enough that I'm wearing the shako and the beard's there, okay, good. At least I'm making that representation. So when I'd introduce myself, I wouldn't say I'm Scala. I'm saying I'm standing in the uniform worn by Bandmaster Scala, and I would just leave it at that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, yeah, first person impression there was not as important to me as the other work I do.
Gotcha.
It sounds like I want to just back up or maybe zoom out a little bit. It sounds like your interest in history, your connection to the Marine Corps, and maybe we'll say your desire to embellish a little bit and play a little you know, fancier repertoire, we'll say, were kind of some reasons that the ball started rolling on forming the Antebellum Marine Band. Were there any other reasons that really got you excited about it? Or
yeah, obviously the story of the Marine Band. That was the first thing about it. You know, okay, I started playing when I was a kid. Until age 18, I had done some drum corps, I had done marching band, I had done all the PMA honor band stuff, you know, from district band to regional to state and what have you. And that was all great. I get in the Marine Corps and I get fully integrated into the Marine Band story. Now I retire, and that comes to a screeching halt. So the 2 years I was away from reenacting and just playing my horn and working on getting the education side done to be a teacher, I was able to sit back more and just appreciate all of that musicality too. And the more bands I played with, the more I missed being in the Marine Band. That, you know, and I can't go back to it. You don't get to go back. So the only other way you can get around that, you know, because you play with a community band, you play with this band or that band, and there might be something fun that reminds you of it, but you know, it's not the same. So the only alternative is if you can do your own. You know, start your own, put it together with the image of what you want it to be, as far as how much of this do I want to be like the Marine Band. Obviously, the performance. I'm speaking about the Marine bands within the Corps, not the President's Own, because they're a whole different system how they work. But the things I didn't want in my Marine Band were the daily BS things that Marines have to deal with. You know, and everybody who's been in a military band can relate to that. You have to stand some kind of phone watch, which is basically a guard duty kind of thing. You have your B billets where you work in the admin section or the repair shop, or you know, you run the buffer on police call when you're cleaning the building. It's like, well, this is going to be the fun stuff that Marine bands do, and I'm not going to, you know, we're not going to live in a barracks, and we're not going to actually have rank to follow and everything else. I'm just going to lead the band, and we're going to have the players. So everything that was fun about being in a Marine Band is what I wanted part of this. And definitely the music making part is the most most important part. You know, Marine bands do marching more than any of the other service bands. That's a given. It's always been one of these things like what is the musical idiom that each service is really, really known for. In my time, Navy bands were always respected to be the best jazzers. You know, and people argue that Air Force bands were the best jazzers, but Colonel Gabriel in those days, the Air Force concert band was the epitome of what military band should be, outside of the capital bands, of course. You know, the Marines have a lock on it because we're precise. We got the silent drill platoon and the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps. So every time you think of a marching military band, you would think of the Marines that way. And the Army would want to argue that, no, we have Pershing Zone and we're tight that, you know, so all of that put together gives each service its kind of personality of what their military bands are like. But there's something different with the Marine Band, and I wanted to help people understand in the Civil War era how that would have been different for us. You know, Army field bands could have been 8-9 guys who came from town that, you know, like well, what is it, the 26 North Carolina? Mm-hmm. They were a brass band in Salem. Mm-hmm. Right, they were the town brass band, and they go in the Army, and Lee takes favor on them, and they become his favorite band. And it was the 8 or 9 guys from that town that were that band, and they're very good players, and they have a really good reputation, and they made a niche for themselves that way. And I wanted to portray that from the angle of the Corps, and that became satisfying. You know, if I could have people leave a concert appreciating that story of how the Marine Band evolves, and that was my way to kind of keep my hand on what I had done for 20 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know you and I have talked on Facebook and previously about the duality of the California and the East Coast Marine Band. We can probably get into that in a minute, but before we kind of move on to that, I was wondering, did the Grant reenacting happen while you were in California, or is that an East Coast adaptation?
No, that started out there too. In fact, I was just talking to somebody today asked me about that. 2010, I had my Marine detachment coming out to reenact us. We were at the Vista Gas and Steam Engine Museum reenactment in July of 2010. And Friday, everybody comes in to set up their camps and everything else, like the circus comes to town, right? So I'm getting my Marine camp set. I've got my band stuff all put away, and all the Marine stuff's getting all put up. And the event coordinator comes over to visit. Now, by then, this is 6 years after I retired. I had grown my beard, you know, my hair's out of Marine Corps reg at that point. And I'm running around either in the red band uniform or the Marine. I was the captain of the Marine detachment, so I had a blue Marine officer's uniform. And people would come up, you know, randomly. I thought you were General Grant out there. You really look like Grant, you know. And my students in the band and my buddy Marines are like, you know, you really do look like him. You know, they'd say that stuff from time to time. And they thought they were teasing me about it, but he's been my hero, so I'm taking that as a compliment. Like, okay, cool. I look like Grant. Who would have thought, right? 2010, this guy comes up, the coordinator comes up like 5 o'clock on a Friday. Oh, good, you're here. Yeah, what's up? Well, our guy that plays Grant can't be here this weekend. And I thought, my first thought was, oh, so that means there's an extra half hour for the band to play. And he says, no, I need you to fill in for that guy. I was like, well, what do you want me to do? Talk about the band? He goes, no, I want you to be Grant.
Hey.
So you're just not getting it.
Right, I wasn't. No, because I was like all band, you know, band in the Marine Corps. Okay. And he said, I don't have the uniform. He says, I'll tell you what, I'll get a sack coat and I'll have the stars sewn on it, and you can just wear your blue pants. And I said, I don't have the right hat. I got kepis and I got shakos. And he said, don't even bother with the hat. Just come out. And you've seen how Larry does it. Like Larry would come out, well, when General Grant was in the Army, and he would talk about Grant dressed like Grant. Which reminds me of like the bad 6th grade book report where somebody dresses up like Lincoln and talks about what Lincoln did, you know. And it always bugged me when I saw this guy, because I'm like a Grant fan. I'm like, why can't you be Grant when you're here? Why do you trip? You know, it bugged me. So I'm like, wow, I got a chance to do this right, by my opinion. So the next morning there was a sack coat waiting out on my camp chair. Okay, I guess 2 o'clock I'm going to be Grant. And I walked up, the audience was all seated out there. And I said, my apologies. I was just meeting with General Lee to take his surrender. And I started talking about Lee's surrender as Grant. And I'd never done it. I'd never done it. But like everything is just pouring out like as him. And the coordinator was watching it. There was a scout from History Channel there that I didn't know about because they were looking to film a show called Lee and Grant, which ran Memorial Day of 2011. And it's the first one I did. So this guy, the scout, saw me standing up doing this show, and he asked for my card. He said, I'm scouting from History Channel. He's looking at my card, and all it said was band stuff all over it. And he says, I'll be in touch. And he calls me a week later, says that they're casting for somebody to play General Grant for this thing. Would I be interested? Yeah. And I was teaching at that point, and I said that I would have to take a day off from school, so I'll get a sick day. And we went up to the Big Sky Ranch where they filmed Little House on the Prairie. And I was there before the entire crew showed up. That's how early I was there in the dark and all. And I watched them all come in, set up the camp and the craft services and the costuming. And I walked into the makeup trailer, and they looked me up and down because I was in uniform at that point. I had, the whole thing going. And they're looking at a picture of Grant, and they're looking at me going, we don't need to do anything to him. He's set. Nice. And that's really where it started to kick off, because after I did that show, the reenactor coordinators were calling me because they wanted to say, we got General Grant, who was just on the History Channel, kind of like as a draw to get people in. And things got more elaborate. There was a Lee that I could work with. There was a Lincoln, and Lincoln I could talk about Lincoln and Grant's meeting and how they coordinated the last year of the war together. And Lee and I would talk about what we talked about at Appomattox, and then I was on my own a lot of times. And there were these people who wanted us to do scripted questioning, and I hate the scripted question because it's just too programmed, Yeah. The thrill, and even now in what I do, the thrill is in not knowing what the questions are and just being able to give them the answer in person and make it believable. And that's the whole fun of what I do, first person Grant,
Yeah.
There's all these hosts like, hey, we're going to give out questions. And I don't want to know. I want them to hit me with what they think they, stump the general. Let's see what happens. And it just kind of grew from that. I came out east 2012. My brother was directing the Windsor Regiment Senior Drum and Bugle Corps in New Jersey. He was short a tuba player, so he asked me to come march the summer season with his drum corps. And I was just finished teaching that for that year. So 6 rehearsals, I learned the drill, I learned the music in 2012, and I marched the whole summer in New Jersey, in the East Coast Drum Corps circuit. And during that time, I had a couple of days off where I met Yari in Gettysburg. We met in town, and we hung out. We actually got to meet and hang out and talk. And he said to me then, can you come back in November and drum major my band?
Wow.
And I'm like, yeah, that'll be fun. Like, where? And he says, for the Remembrance Day parade. And I'm like Elf, like a Christmas gram. What's that? Because I'm like, a Remembrance Day parade? What's that about? He wanted a military trained drum major. Of course, if you're gonna go through the band leader course at the Armed Forces School of Music, you first have to do the drum majors course. Whether you become a drum major or not, you still have to have all that training. So Yari knew I knew mace signals and everything else for a military band, so that's what he wanted with his band, and I came back to do that. So that puts one foot of me back on the East Coast at that point. That I came back the next summer, and we did the Battle of the Bands, where Yari directed all the rebel musicians, and I directed all the Union musicians in my Marine Band uniform during the 150th anniversary thing here in town. So I started looking at, I might start going out there to do more things. And I actually got contacted by somebody watching the parade that year, the Remembrance Day parade, because Yari wanted me to come out. And he said, come out and walk in front of the band as Grant, because I was already starting to do more Grant stuff. So the Federal City Brass Band marched the parade, and General Grant was walking in front of them the whole time. And that got some local guy here who contacts me after the parade, and he suggests that we do a tour in town, because he's like, where are you from? I got to have you do a tour for me. And all I could tell him was Grant was here in '67 to visit the orphanage, so that would be the only connection. About that point, too, the economy in California really started to, go sour. Gas prices were up. It was hard to get hard to keep it going. I was teaching, but things weren't. I was not happy with the political situation in a classroom, and my wife had been a teacher in New Jersey, and she couldn't get a teaching job in California. So we were both looking at some point we're going to move back east. Now, when I was out here in 2013 for Remembrance Day, she said to me, "See if you can find a job." And that was the same time that this guy here says, "Hey, how about doing a tour for me?" And at that point, I'm looking at maybe we're going to move back, but what am I? And then the band in California is saying, "Well, what are we going to do if you move back?" So he said, "We can keep it going. I can come back to do events with the band," and we made that work for 2 years.
Wow.
And then it just kind of fell apart because you're trying to put a band together, even just a quintet. Sometimes it's hard to find 4 other players. Who can agree to be at a certain place at a certain time. And I was trying to herd cats in California from out here, at the same time I might be out there trying to do the same thing here. I was like, I'm going to have to concentrate on one or the other. And just not being there was going to be the thing. I was going to have to let it go out there.
Is the California band and the East Coast band not currently both going on, or was that
resolved? The California band, I guess you say we shuttered it and we boxed it in California, because I was also taking the coats with me because I had a cache of the red coats, and I had them out here for most of the things I was doing. And like a week before I'd go to California, I was boxing them up and shipping them out ahead of me. Wow. So everything would be out there already. Because there were, I think I had 3 guys out there that bought their own uniforms. Because I had a cache of red ones. They were from an old stock that some community band had, and they were Marine Band coats with different buttons. So I had Marine buttons put on them. And then I found a vendor in Oregon who was making the Marine Band frocks. So she had a real nice deal for me. She shut down over COVID, unfortunately. Now I got to find a new vendor. But I wanted all the buttons to be the same. So she said, the best way I can guarantee that is if you send me the buttons you want. So I started writing to every Marine I know, "Hey, if you got extra dress blue buttons laying around, let me have them." Or when I was in California, I could go to the dry cleaner on the base, and they had this big tote box full of buttons, that are spares. So I could just go through that and take as many as I needed to get the coats all done up.
Something you don't realize that you would miss until you don't have access anymore.
Oh yeah. It spoiled me.
So since you had the experience having been in multiple bands and starting the California one and the East Coast one kind of separately and both being successful, if there were to be a new band to form and they were to ask you for maybe your best piece of advice for our listeners, what piece of advice do you have to newly forming bands?
Don't settle. Don't settle for, it'll be okay, or it'll be enough to get by. Because if you do that, that's always going to be your default. If you want to have a fully staffed band, if you think your fully staffed trumpet section or cornet section should be 4, then don't settle for 3 or 2, because then you're always going to settle for that same thing. Well, if I want 6 cornets and I want 3 alto horns and I want 3 tenor horns, then always have that. Always insist on that as your minimum. Don't go with less, because then it makes it easy to do that. And eventually, the people you have in your pool. I've got a pool of 65 players that I reach out to every time I want to staff a gig, and somehow the largest band I can muster is about 16 people. Just because life. Family, everything comes up where somebody wants to play, but they just can't make it. And, they're in Ohio, they're in West Virginia. And I do have players out of state that come and play. And sometimes they're more consistent than the local people.
Wow.
But I still put the message out to all 60 to see who's going to come. I've actually had 2 people now that have played in both bands.
Oh, cool.
And one's an active duty Marine. He played with me in California. He's stationed at Quantico now, and he's actually played with us up here too.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it was really cool listening to all the all the things you got to or got to and get to do as reenacting as Grant. Are there one or two like really standout performances with the band that jump out in your mind?
Yeah. In California, I think it's in Redlands, is the Lincoln Shrine. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Where you guys are in Pennsylvania or where?
We're both from the DC area.
Yeah,
okay,
I'm from Pennsylvania. I grew up in Lebanon, Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah, okay. My first Marine drum major was from Lebanon.
Oh, nice.
Dennis Wolf, yeah. But in California, in Redlands, is the Lincoln Shrine, and it's this big stone brick building that's like a Lincoln museum. And there was another band that formed out there. It was an offshoot of the Armory Band, and they're their own separate little band now as well. And they were in contact with somebody at the Lincoln Shrine. They wanted to do a tattoo. So they wanted the cavalry band, their band, and they wanted my Marine band to be part of it. So they wanted us to be the focal point concert band and then have the three other bands march. Now, one of my buddies who was a legit Marine band drum major, I took Yari's page and I had this guy drum major the band for me because they wanted General Grant to review the troops with Lincoln at this tattoo. So I directed the concert and then turned the band over to him for the parade portion. And I had to run back behind the building and change, which was normal in California. For the reenactings we were doing when I had the Marine band, the Marine detachment, and being General Grant, you know, the detachment would go out and do the battle. The battle would be over. We go back to camp. I'd come out dressed as the band leader to do our afternoon concert. The second battle would come, and the Marine detachment would go out. Sometime during the battle, I would disappear, so that when the troops came by at the end, President Grant could be there, or General Grant could be there with President Lincoln to review. And there were people on the field like, "How did you change so quickly?" You know, so that wasn't a problem. Well, it was tricky with having, got to put boots on too. So and sashes and buttons and everything else that the band's wearing. So I figured it all out. But I think for the band in California, the Lincoln, the tattoo at the Lincoln Shrine was a pretty good one for us. That we had, we got to do everything in that whole day's event. The other big thing we did, the first year I was back here, the first full year was 2015. Now Jim Getty, who was the most well-known Lincoln presenter in the country, literally lived a block away from us where we are here in town. He passes away in 2015. And Bill Peck was the best known Lincoln impressionist in California about the same time. In fact, he and Getty were friends, actually. Bill Peck had been a Marine, so he always loved, he'd come into my camp, "How's my Marines doing?" He goes, "I got my Marine band here." So he always played that Lincoln angle really well with the band, and he liked having me be Grant with him too. So he was going to retire at the end of 2014 from being Lincoln. And that was the first year that I was out here that I went back. So my East Coast band played here in Gettysburg at the Rupp House at the beginning of August. 2 weeks later, I'm out in California for the reenactment in Huntington Beach where Bill Peck was going to retire. And he wanted the Marine Band to play his ceremony out there. So we got to give him a proper send-off. So that was another high point for that band in California at that time. Because we always did things with Lincoln where I'd introduce him as the 16th president, and we would do Hail to the Chief when he would come out. We would play Old 100th, which is what the Marine Band did when he was here in Gettysburg. They played Old 100s before he spoke. And then he would do his address. And then he would turn to me and tell everybody how he's always liked the song Dixie. And he always wants to hear it performed. So he'd say, "Band leader, could you play that for us?" And we would do that little routine with him. But that was always our fun Lincoln show that we did. Separate from the band in the East. As far as like on your sheet here, you have a question about that. High points for this band in the East was playing at Grant's Tomb in 2017 on Grant's birthday. I had already been out there a couple times booked to speak as Grant at Grant's Tomb for other occasions, President's Day and some other things. And the ranger who was out there really wanted a live band. And I said, "Well, I got this band. We could do this thing." And, and there was no official thing for me to do at the National Park birthday commemoration for Grant. They have a couple speakers who come from West Point. They've got a cadet color guard that comes in. Some of the Grant relations get up and speak. And they have a bugler and a drummer from the Army Band station at West Point who do, taps and a couple other things. Mm-hmm. So the Ranger really liked the idea of having a band sit down and do like a concert do a serenade before the ceremony. And then I said, if we're doing that, we're doing all the ceremonial stuff. We're going to march into colors. We're going to play the national anthem. We'll provide somebody to play taps. We'll do, when they do the wreath laying at the front of the tomb, we'll do the proper hymns that can be used. And Loris Sichel, Loris, oh, yeah. He had the stuff that Sousa had written up for the reinterment of Grant. Because when Grant was moved from his original temporary sarcophagus into the mausoleum, the Marine Band did that under Sousa. Oh, wow. So John gave me all the music that Sousa had done. So we used that in this ceremony for all this wreath laying and everything else. And I told the band, I said, it's not often that we get to be reenactors in this band because we're always just playing concerts and not recreating something legit. But we're really right now where we are, we're set up right where the Marine Band was set under John Philip Sousa when Grant was brought from behind the mausoleum and taken in. And we're playing the exact music that was used at that time. Wow. So that was one of those really cool things that got to, worlds were colliding, but in a really good way on that day. And that was a real highlight for the band to do that.
Wow, that's intense. What year was that?
2017.
Gotcha. Yeah, very cool. Being
and that goes back to one of your questions about what kind of connection does it keep for me? That was doing exactly what I got to do as a band leader in the Marine Corps. We would do ceremonies of that kind of stature all the time. And this was something most of my players in the East Coast band would never get to do in like a regular community band. But here they're in this quasi-military band with a trained military band leader doing one of those legit ceremonies that normally only military bands get to do.
Being an early band in Gettysburg, are there any, obviously there's going to be perks that come with that, but I'm curious, are there any negative things that come with being so close or interconnected with a place like Gettysburg?
I think we're interconnected mostly because it's where I live. Okay. National Parks has never asked us to do anything here. When I first was trying to drum up musicians here and find people, I was reaching out to local bands and local musicians, and there were a couple of these guys, older guys who had been in the local band circuit for a lot of years. They were telling me up front, you're never going to get this off the ground. No one will ever do this, and you'll never have a band like that here. You got to go through our system, and you got to come to our band and play in our band before people start coming out to yours. And I wasn't buying it. And I said, this is a small town. I said, I was in because my band in California didn't just play at the reenactments. We were the town band of Ramona, California, also, because that was our sponsor. And Ramona in San Diego County is this little town outside the city. And they had the largest freestanding adobe brick building built in 1894, the oldest. Wow. So we were the town band of this, Western era 1890s town. And I somehow managed to put together a full concert band, and I had a full representation of my band that would play things out there. And I was already confident I could do that here. And these local guys are like, no, it'll never happen here. You can't do that. And I said, well, I was one of 13 community bands in San Diego. So I'm pretty confident in this area, I'll be able to put something together. So like with Grant being told he can't do something or being, he's going to find a way. And that's always been my inspirations with Grant, is he finds a way to do stuff when everybody tells him it can't be done. So I'm going to make this work in spite of them.
Yeah, no, it's a great mentality to have.
Right? I mean, that's sometimes that kind of grit is all that's going to get you there, because your players on the side are going to be seeing that going, yeah, I think I want to do this because his heart is into this. So this could be something fun. And then when everybody's on that same plane together, you've had gigs like that where you play something and then when the smoke clears, you're all looking at each other like, that was amazing. We just all knew intrinsically what was going on. And finding the players to do that became, kind of a search, but tooth and claw, it's been coming together. And whether we play for something the town recognizes or not, local guy here named Ben Jones, retired teacher, he is in charge of the Gettysburg Brass Band Festival. And he has a little like 5 or 6 piece group he plays with from time to time as well. I caught his attention when I first got here. So he invited us to be part of the Brass Band Festival because I wanted to go out to the seminary and play, like, this will be great. We'll be on that stage. He says, oh, no. He goes, because you play out there for that, I won't be able to have you back for like maybe once every 3 years because he has these rotations he does of all the bands that are featured. So, okay, so what are we going to do? And he says, Friday night of the festival, there's 5 or 6 locations in town where we have different bands play, like from 5 o'clock to 6 at this one museum, from 6 to 7 at the visitor center, from 7 to 8 at this place. So we became one of those bands that every year on Friday, we're one of the bands that plays. And when the other band, and we're the last one. So when the other bands finish, they're running over to watch the next band. And when they all finish, they come over and watch us because we're getting ready to play the concert and there's like 18 people. And I turn around after the first tune and there's 45 or 50 people standing there. It's like, what just happened? And all these other band people showed up. So this has been going since 2015 where we've been that Friday night band. So that's our one regular local performance a year during the Brass Band Festival. And we were playing on the Rupp House porch, but the Rupp House closed for a while. So there was nothing able to do there. And Mr. G's Ice Cream Shop is I'm doing all these plugs for all these people in town. Mr. G's Ice Cream Shop is across the street from my house. And Mike, who's the owner, I went over to see him and said, hey, we got this band and we need a place to play for the Brass Band Festival. Oh, yeah, you want to play up? I said, I wanted to play on his upper porch. And he was worried about the weight of everybody being up there because it's an old building. So we wind up playing on his front patio that's right on Baltimore Street, directly across from the Farnsworth house. Wow. And we just kind of move all the chairs out. We put our arc out and we do our concert there every year for the Brass Band Festival, 8 to 9 o'clock on that Friday. Wow. And what's been fun, because it's on Baltimore Street, is pointing out during the show we are mere feet away from where the actual Marine Band marched through town with Lincoln November 19th, and I'm right there on the street showing them. Last year, with everything being closed like it was and all these, everything was collapsing in on gigs and how hard it was just to get players together. I said to my players at a certain point, if we play on my porch, nobody can tell us no. Because my porch is right on Baltimore Street. I can throw a cigar off my front porch and hit the middle of the street. That's how close I am. So everybody's sick of sitting at home playing by themselves. And they said, can we get together? I said, yeah, if you're fine with it, I'm fine with it. So I called my Marine Band friends. I reached out to West Point and asked, how are you setting up to perform? This was in 2020, So the Marine Band said, well, we're sitting distance, but we're all sitting together. The West Point Band said we're sitting distance and we have plexiglass between all the players, but we're still able to play. Okay. So I talked to my landlord who has the other half of the building's porch. And I said, can we use your side of the porch? And he said, are you kidding me? That'd be great. Have a band playing out front. Yeah, do it. So my 12 players who agreed to play, I said, we're going to set you up. You can, you want to sit 6 feet from each other. I got 2 porches to spread you out. I'll put a podium out on the sidewalk and I'll direct you from the sidewalk. And we'll just play there on the night we would normally play across the street at Mr. G's. Because by then, this is first week of June. By then, people are in town walking the streets and visiting and wanting something to do. Yeah. So we did that 3 times last year. Nice. Brass Band Festival, 3 times. Memorial Day, we played before the parade. And we did a Marine Corps birthday concert in November. just impromptu on the street. Like we had everybody's dressed, we're in our uniforms, and guests were, people were walking by. I put a sandwich board out telling them what time the concert was going to start. I had a whole narration about what the concert would be that I delivered that between selections. And so we've been playing in town without anybody's help. And I can't think how much better it would be if we had help to play.
Prime real estate right there. Is the Antebellum Marine Band currently using period instruments? I remember you said years ago that it was kind of a work in progress and stuff. But where are you kind of at now with this East Coast group?
I'm not any further along because I'm thinking for my own critical self that I've not been aggressive enough about getting that done. Obviously, it's going to take money. It's going to take somebody who has the money to fund it. Then it's going to take the time to build the instruments, because you can't just go to the period instrument shop and, go ahead, go pick you up a set of sax horns and you're all set, Yeah. I think the replica horns are more expensive than the originals in a lot of cases. Because I've seen a few of those. Yeah.
They're all made to order, like, especially like if you're getting them made new, not even secondhand, like new reproduction horns. Yeah, they're pretty pricey.
Right. And Mark Elrod's got a fabulous house full of instruments. And when we've been in touch, he's been a help a lot of times. 3 Christmas seasons ago, he loaned me an over the shoulder E flat horn that I had to sit down and woodshed with, so I was comfortable with it. And I've used it a couple times. The Christmas, the tuba caroling thing they do here in town. I went down. I always go in my uniform and take my tuba with me, and it's more visual. And I wind up passing cards and trying to get people interested in coming to my band by doing that. So one year I had the over the shoulder horn to play the Christmas stuff with, so that made it more interesting for me too. But that same year I was able to do a Christmas brass quintet program at a senior center, and we called it Christmas with the Lincolns. And we had everybody in the group had period horns. So we did the whole brass quintet thing on period horns of carols of that time.
Nice.
So that was pretty interesting. So that's the closest experience I've had on my own, not playing in somebody else's brass band.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wow, that's what it really should sound like all around me. My experience as a reenactor, how does that help me lead the band? Because I really went fast over how I started making the band work. What I learned with reenactors, the first couple times I fell in with the 2nd U.S. Cavalry, it was with loaner gear. You'd show up and they'd have you'd put on their whole kit, kepi down to your shoes pretty much, and they'd give you a weapon to use. And then they say, the next time you come out, buy yourself a kepi to start with, and then buy your own shoes, and we'll give you this piece, that piece. And then every time you come out, you get one more piece of the uniform, so that eventually by the end of the season, you have your own full kit over that time. So, okay, that made sense to me. They had a stash. So I had that same kind of thing going with the band when people would show up. I had uniforms. I'd say, well, everybody wear black pants and a white long sleeve shirt. Because if the pants don't fit, you're at least in black pants all together, uniform to us in the sky blue. You want a long sleeve shirt because that wool is going to get itchy, So, and the people that stay, they look at it like, yeah, I think I want to have the blue pants like I'm supposed to have them, and they would eventually buy their own because they get tired of borrowing. And the thing with borrowing, you only have certain amounts of things, and it always works out that the smallest guy goes for the biggest coat because he's got a lot of room in it and he thinks that's better, and then the biggest guy is fat man in a little coat and can't even button it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, these are supposed to be form-fitting. So little guy, you should be in the little coat so big guy can wear it, and then I can have both people dressed.
There you go. Yeah, that's a problem not a problem. It's a unique situation for us to be in as the band that I run over at George Mason University. We have all university-owned uniforms and instruments and music and stuff, and it kind of functions like a high school or college marching band in terms of the uniforms and needing to have enough to fit everybody. And
right. And that's what the drum and bugle corps do, because nobody in Santa Clara Vanguard has their own uniform that they went and bought that they carry around on a hanger behind them.
Very true.
And that's always been something I've wanted to do with my setup. Is I wanted to have like a trailer that would have the uniforms all in rows. I could have a place to store the instruments that hopefully people would buy their own period instruments, because that is a little bit of a sticky point for some of my players. They don't want to pick up an E flat horn because they're like, like it's going to poison them somehow if they play it. Well, I'm used to playing my C trumpet. Well, play an E flat cornet just for my gig.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to know how to play that anyway?
Very true.
Ken, this has been great. It's been great to talk to you. We really thank you for your time on we're recording this on a Friday evening here. So we really thank you for your time. Where can people go if they want to find out more about what you do or more about the band?
All right. For the band, we have a Facebook page, Antebellum Marine Band. Nobody asked me why I picked that name, but what it was for me, the 2nd U.S. Cavalry Band would be where the S's are alphabetically. This other band was called the Armory Band, so it was AR. And I'm looking at that like, well, Antebellum comes before that alphabetically, so we'll be listed first.
There you go.
Even though we're not truly, if we're playing the band of the Civil War, we're actually in the bellum and not we're not antebellum. But we still cover that period because Scala became leader in 58. So Antebellum Marine Band is the name of the Facebook page. And then the email address for the band is AMB2015, because that's when I moved the band to the east. So it's, AMBAND is for Antebellum Marine Band, AMBAND2015 at gmail.com. And I hinted at it earlier that we have players who come from different states. We don't really rehearse much, and that's always fun to tell the audience at the end of the concert. And we'll say, I have players come from this state, that state, and everywhere, and we really don't have a chance to rehearse. So we just sight read this whole program with you today right here. And the most I can do is send parts out to people, maybe give them a few indicators about real particular about note length. I've always been an advocate for playing through the bar line, playing beat 4 all the way to the end and not trying to cheat it with a breath at every bar line. And so I always make little notes like that in the music, in the parts when I send them out to people about full value. If something is indicated as staccato, there's a reason for it. Or if it's indicated as legato, that means it's got to be legato, because we're going for that effect of how the Marine Band would perform it, not just getting through the tune. So a lot of times if people pay attention to that stuff, when they get there, within a couple minutes, everybody's going, oh, you weren't kidding. Oh, okay, now, and it all kind of helps. Because if I can't rehearse, I've got to have some other way to get across what our style is as a band. Definitely. So I try. Yeah, so it's important people play. Everything that I've scored for the band is in PDF form, so it's easy to send out to people. They don't have to have a special music program if players are curious about that. We don't have any recordings, at least that I know of.
No secret tape recordings of those porch concerts that you know of?
Well, I'm sure somebody's got something somewhere, and I'm reticent to put anything like that out because, the purists are going to jump on you like, how come you're using modern horns? Mm-hmm. And okay, you got me. I'm using modern horns because that's all I have right now, and that's all the people who are playing have. And if I went with who only has period horns, there would be none of us out here. So
yeah, exactly.
That's not necessarily a deal breaker. If somebody's interested in being part of the band, the biggest thing is you got to be able to read. And that kind of shadows what the actual Marine Band talks about. People who buy into my band buy into that philosophy that we are representing that band of that time. So our impression, if we're going to do an impression of the Marine Band, is we have to come across credibly as a better band than your regular 5 guys in the Army that are marching along behind a regiment somewhere kind of thing. And there's no slight on those 5 guys, but if I'm going to do an impression of General Grant, I better bloody well look like him. You know what I mean? So if you're going to be George Meade, you better not have mutton chops. If you want to be Burnside, you better not show up with a clean shaven face. You know what I mean? So if you're going to be the Marine Band, when you play, it better be, wow, yeah, that would be the Marine Band. They sound really good. So, obviously you want the best players, but you got to buy into that mindset to prepare yourself for that too. And that's kind of hard to find sometimes. because everybody has their level that they're willing to commit to, and if it doesn't meet, then it doesn't meet. But that's the task.
All right. Well, thanks again so much. It was a lot of fun.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again so much to Ken Serfass for coming onto the Early American Brass Band podcast. It was really interesting hearing how Ken was able to start a band over in California and the challenges and the unique circumstance he was in with trying to relocate that to the East Coast, and on top of all that, being able to apply his reenacting chops to the early American brass band scene. So, very interesting interview, Ken. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah, great to have him on, and happy he made the time to speak with us. As you said at the top, if you like what you're hearing, you can support us on all social media platforms, as well as YouTube. We also have a Patreon page and a Teespring store, so you can feel free to check all that out. As always, there are show notes for this episode on our website. That's eabbpodcast.com. A bunch of other resources up there. If you want to get in touch with us, you can shoot us a message on any social media platform or email if you like that. Our email address is eabb.podcast@gmail.com. Our featured album for this episode is actually a video of a concert given at the Library of Congress by the President's Own United States Marine Band. They did a program there back in 2015 all about music in the Lincoln White House. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go check that out. They go through music of the time that would have been heard by Lincoln in the White House, played by the President's Own United States Marine Band. It's great, about an hour and a half long. Great program, very educational, some good music in there as well. So we will have that linked in our show notes page and in the description. If you're listening to this on your phone, in the description of the podcast, or if you're on YouTube, there will be a link down there too. You could also just search on YouTube "Music in the Lincoln White House: U.S. Marine Band," and that'll pull it right up. So we hope you'll go check that out and enjoy that great concert. Music in this episode comes from the President's Own United States Marine Band and the 8th GM Regiment Band.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.